The power of the universe is at your full disposal.
This is the PowerShell Podcast. It's all about PowerShell and the PowerShell community.
The power
of our future.
Without further ado, please help me in welcoming
Jordan Hammond and Andrew Plaw.
Hey everybody, welcome to the PowerShell Podcast. I'm deadweight Jordan Hammond, and here to carry me is Andrew Plaw with his excellence.
I wouldn't call it dead weight. It's like a fishing weight. We can't catch a fish without the unison, man.
Here's the problem. I'm a lot of dead weight, so Andrew needs some help. So we've brought in special guest, Claudio Silva.
Hey guys, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm all here to help, of course. So if you need to lift something, let's do it.
Actually, this is actually going to become the physical labor, PowerShell and physical labor podcast.
That will be harder because I do PowerShell to be lazy, not to work hard, but smarter, right?
Everybody does.
Right.
We might need some like robotic process automation using PowerShell.
That should not be that hard.
Just get some robots. We have a couple, right?
Yeah, sure.
I guess we could reach out to our former guest if we needed some robotics, some IoT type stuff. Our previous guest, you might know him a little bit. Do you know?
I know a little bit. Yeah, he's very eager on that matter. So it's always cool whenever you are talking and then, oh yeah, I turn on this LED light and I say, cool. So for me, it's like, but should not that be just on and off? And then I see the code and say, never mind.
Right.
It's much more than that. Yeah, right.
And for the listeners who haven't listened to our previous episode, we talked with Daniel Silva. And on that podcast, we discovered that you were his brother because we know who you are. We've seen you in the community for quite a while. And I definitely know of you. I've been following you for quite a while. But connected that he was your brother. And we were like, wow, we definitely need to follow up with some brother on brother action here.
Yeah, that was nice. So my brother is younger than me. We have 8 years apart, and he was always on the tech side and gaming and stuff like that. And whenever he starts work, so it's the little brother. So you start like, okay, so now it's the real stuff. And all of a sudden, he starts being very interested on all the kinds of IT and work better and faster and the reliable way. So it's always cool to discuss things with him, because I was thinking about do this thing like this. What do you think? And then it's like, wait a second, I think I read something about the PowerShell module that can help with that. So maybe instead of reinventing the wheel, let's try to leverage on these things. And yeah, we go on that a lot of times with different tech stuff and not tech stuff, of course, but it's really cool to see the progress.
Was it always like that? Or like when you were younger before getting into IT, were you less helpful, or has that changed over time?
Actually, I don't think so.
So the 8-year gap, I'd be surprised. There's a difference between close or similar age and brothers in 8 years.
Yeah. So I think I was always that kind of person that really likes to help and to learn from that. So it's like teaching and learning while teaching and so on. And that's a motto of anyone, or there is no one that knows everything, right? So it's always cool to discuss things with different point of views and to see the things in a different way, to change your mind sometimes. Why not? Well, because you have some preconceived things, and then you think, well, but now I heard this way, and you start digging on that, and you change your mind. So having a younger brother, of course, you kind of measure what you say, the way that you say, but when it comes an adult or you start seeing some different point of views, it's really, really interesting, because this 8 years gap in the end give different generation in the end, right? So and yeah, the way that you think on the stuff can be quite different sometimes, which is cool. So
it's actually the brother that got me into PowerShell is 8 years older than me, so I feel like I'm living a very similar experience here.
Yeah. So that reminds me. So whenever I start with PowerShell, and then I check like, but when this happened, when this appears, because I don't remember hearing about this, and then like back to 2007 or something, and I said, well, I'm like 8 years behind. Maybe I should start doing more stuff to catch a train. But yeah, 2007, if I'm not wrong, and I started my first, let's say, script, a real script, with bad, ugly code, of course, as a good first script that we do, was in 2015. So yeah, it has this 8 years gap in the end.
How did you initially get involved in the community? I mean, you mentioned always kind of having a love of teaching and learning through that process and understanding the value, but when did you kind of apply that to your career?
Yeah, so during my career, I always try to ask questions and to learn and to share what I learned from that. And from the community, I start on the SQL Server community, let's say this way. Back in 2011, I went to my first SQL Saturday, which is an event that happens on multiple cities. And actually, in Portugal, Nico, which is a SQL Server guy, was the person that made the first SQL Saturday outside the US. So it was the first one, and I started attending, but always in like the back, listening, learning, applying the stuff, doing some questions, and I started interacting with more people. And then in 2015, later that year, I had just changed work from a database developer, or mainly developer, to the DBA. So my motto was, okay, a lot of people is talking badly from the relationship between the developer and the DBA. And I don't think that should work that way, because I have proved to myself and to others that it's possible to work together and to do great things together. So let's go to the other side of the fence and see if it's really, really that bad or not. So at that point in 2015, I did my first presentation on the SQL user group, which included PowerShell. So at that point, I already had written one or two functions related with SQL Server to help automating some tasks that doing by hands, it will be like running some T-SQL scripts, but then you need to wait for something and run again and check if they give an error and all that stuff that we know. And I said, no way, let's try this way. And I start investigating what is how to declare a variable, how to do a for each, and all that stuff. And ended by doing a first script, which was like a huge one with a lot of spaghetti code and stuff like that. And later that year, on the TUG IT conference that my brother talked about in the last episode, that it's a bit of everything. So we had PowerShell, SQL Server, and .NET, and all that stuff. At that point, one Brazilian guy that lived here in Portugal, Murilo, just said, hey, you like PowerShell, you are doing some scripting for that, let me introduce you to someone. And at that conference, Chris Ilamer was there. So the guy, so I was being a helper on the TUG IT conference, like room managing and trying to help the speakers and so on. And the guy just took me to Chrissy and said, hey, Chrissy, so this is Cláudio. He's started working with PowerShell, and he has some cool ideas. So at that point, Chrissy was awesome, very receptive, and say, let's exchange contacts, let's start talking. And because I said, I saw your DBA tools. At the point, it was just a migration tool. So you could, with one command, you could kind of migrate everything from one server to the other, which was awesome. But then I said, well, I did this. This is more about the best practices. Do you think it can fit on the module or not? Oh, that would be awesome. So then that was the first comment that was integrated on the module outside of the migration. And yeah, then from fast forward, we are 650 comments plus. So it's a huge model with a great community behind it. A lot of people helping in different manners, which is really, really cool. Yeah.
Awesome. So you contributed some functions to DBA tools?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
wow.
yeah, we started the Slack channel and all that stuff around the module and then around the community in the end. And that's why if you go to the Slack channel, you have a PowerShell channel on the SQL Server community, because people is using DBA tools, and not only DBA tools, of course, to do things, and they have questions that need some help.
Now, in the SQL community, how has PowerShell been received? How has it kind of impacted the way that I guess people at large do things? Is it really prevalent in the SQL community?
Right now, yes. In the beginning, I don't think so, to be honest. I think in the beginning, a lot of people did not understand the power of the PowerShell in the end, and how, in the end, these things together could make a huge difference, the way that we work. And if you just manage a couple of instances, probably it's not that you don't need it, but probably you don't feel the thing like, oh, I need to learn all these new worlds to do something, okay? Because you can jump on a couple of servers, click around, and it's done. When you start having dozens, hundreds, thousands of instances that you need to manage, and you need to have some consistency, you need to reproduce things, you need to avoid the error, and so on, is where DBA tools is key. Okay, so that is the main point. At the beginning, I would say a couple of us that joined the project in the beginning was very eager to add functions, to have support on the things, to have good documentation and so on, so that people could join us and not feeling like afraid. This a big beast, and that way it will be very difficult and so on. But nowadays, I think PowerShell is more than let's say a regular thing everywhere, and people start most of the things from that side. So let's see how I can do this, because I already do it manually. I know how to do it, but let's say that I need to check a few logins in dozens of instances, if they exist or not. Let's check how I can do that. And that, leverage people to do things in a slip of the fingers, very, very fast, in a repetitive way, and less error prone. That is automation in the end.
So I just like that it started off as you said basically it was a copy and database over between servers was the initial function of it, and it's become a module that's so big that it has its own month of lunches book just to handle everything that goes into what that can do. Which, I mean, as someone who is terrible at SQL, I'm not sure how much I could follow along, but it's just awesome to see the community start off with one thing that builds into something that everyone can use, just because the need was there and there's a bunch of willing people to dive in and fill the need.
Absolutely. That is the base thing. So it's like you are doing something, you have a need, you know how to do it, how to coding and put it in this case on the module, and you say, okay, I will take 1 hour of my time, I put this on the module, and tomorrow thousands of people, because it's literally thousands of people, can leverage on that, and that is awesome. And with the book, in the end, you can imagine 650 commands and counting. It's impossible to cover on 30 days or let's say a month of lunch. So we need, of course, to pack the things in some aggregation of topics like security and compression and the laboratories and all that stuff. And we try to build something that people can follow from the day one and put on top all the way until they feel more comfortable using the thing. So then when a new command appears, actually is like a new name. They know what it does. They know how to check the help. They know how to check the examples. They know they should test it, not in production. And after that, right, they can apply with confidence. That is awesome.
I'd like to point out, knowing you shouldn't test it in production is very different than not testing it in production.
So it really depends if you are in a rush or not. But I always try to remember people, hey, okay, we can do this change, but do you have a development environment, a Q&A environment where we can test that? Because this can go wrong or can go very cool. So, but we need to test it first and to have an idea how much time it will take, for instance. Yeah.
I like the going straight to production as a proof of confidence. I like it.
So the thing here is, if you go with the get comments, you are cool, okay? So if you go with the get comments, we make sure that all the get comments in the end are just doing select queries, let's say, to the database or to the server, okay? So of course that select in some situations can go wrong too, but that is not the idea here. So you are not saying a set comment to change a property or to change some behavior. So with the get, and if you are on a central machine that have access to all the other servers, you can use the get with confidence to gather the data and analyze and then do whatever you want with that.
That's really cool. It's so interesting how DBA tools played such a large role, and it's almost hard to understand or like to compare it to something with the role that DBA tools kind of played with impacting the DBA community and kind of taking them to a new level. And the project and the people behind it, it's just such a cool thing to see, both for PowerShell and both for SQL as well. And you're mentioning the Month of Lunches book and how it kind of is formatted and stuff like that. Would you say that that's a great introduction if you're maybe working as a DBA and haven't kind of started leveraging DBA tools? That's a kind of a good starting point to kind of show you the ropes and get you introduced.
Yeah, I agree with that, Santos. So the thing here is that some people that not even know PowerShell already,
Right.
we already have feedback that using the DBA tools Month of Lunch is a good way to learn both. So to start learning the PowerShell and understand the basic stuff, and also to leverage on the knowledge they have with SQL Server. So it's really not one thing that you should say like, oh no, you should go first with the PowerShell in Month of Lunch and only after you should go the other. So if you can do that, that will be perfect, because then you start with the basics and go on the next level. But let's say if people most of the time are copy pasting comments from the internet and trying to do stuff, if they read something that really explains why they should do it in a specific way with the DBA tools, that is awesome.
Yeah, I think that what we often talk about is when it comes to learning PowerShell, you need to use it. And if you're doing SQL stuff, learning PowerShell in that, like as you're going through and actually solving problems, because your head's in SQL all day anyways, I think that's a fantastic way, because it can be hard to just learn tech for its own sake, but if you're doing it, applying it to something, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, it's not impossible for sure, but if you think, okay, if I can put my hands on the mud and do something, the ramp up that you will get to be more proficient with the tool, with the language, and so on, will be much easier. So because reading something and just imagine, oh, this is probably doing this or that, or so. No, try yourself, test it. So that's why, for instance, we provide a laboratory with Docker and with the containers, because did you broke the container? That's cool. Just remove it, spin up one again. Let's do it again. So that is the way. So you feel confident that you are connecting to different instances. You are playing around. You can simulate that you are doing in parallel and then scaling that for dozens or hundreds of instances, it's much easier. So that is a good way to fire and then forget, and then, okay, now this is all broken, let's just delete this and let's do it again. I'll remind my father when I had like my first computer, I was like, oh, should I go here? Should I go there? Should I click here or write these comments? So to the early times of the MS-DOS. And then he said, hey, if you don't try it, you will not learn. So if you broke, we will fix it somehow. We don't know how, but let's and that mindset of let's test it, let's try it, and then fix it, I think is the best way to learn.
Making mistakes and learning from them is so important. And in that context of tech, you definitely need the guardrails and the safety of a test environment, of Docker, of whatever it is for your particular situation, so you can comfortably make changes without getting fired.
Yep, totally agree.
Awesome. Now, I was looking through some modules, and I definitely want to talk about DBA tools more, but there is a module called Dba Checks that I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about. What is that?
Yeah, so Dba Checks, the way that I like, or that we in the end like to to explain is about checklists. So we all have checklists. Grocery shopping, checklist to onboarding a new colleague, whatever. Even if we don't have the box there to check, in our mind we are checking the box, right? This is being done and so on. So there are gazillions of best practices and things that you should keep in mind when working with SQL Server and as other tools. But in this case, DBA Checks is a easy way to have a kind of a framework that you can configure what you want to be your best practices, or let's see, your backup policy retention. And you want to make sure that you have a full backup every single day. But you also want to make sure that you have a transaction log backup every 2 hours. So you can configure all these things, and then you can just say, okay, now pick DBA checks, run against these hundreds of instances, and give me back what is green and what is red. And as Rob Sewell says, green is good, red is bad. So it means that somehow the configuration that you did or that you are expecting to be there is not being met, and therefore probably you need to fix something. Okay, so doing that by hand, connecting to each instance, and so on, it's adulting tests. And in this specific case, DBA checks leverage on what? DBA tools. So that is the thing. So we have DBA tools. Whenever something is missing that we want to use on DBA checks, we check if we can implement on DBA tools, on the get commands and so on. And then we bump the version on DBA check saying, now DBA tools version X is the minimum required, and we implement a new check. And regarding DBA checks, we are actually rewriting the module or the tests, let's say this way, because DBA check also uses tester for the testing, and we are rewriting the things to use Pester 5, so the latest version of Pester. There is some major and breaking change on the way that that is done, but it's much faster, and we want to get to this, let's say, new version that will be faster and make it easier for us to develop new stuff.
Well, that's awesome.
Is the breaking change in Pester specifically for like SQL, or is everyone that's been using Pester need to go through and?
Yeah. If people using Pester want to move to version 5, there are some code syntax and stuff that really change. So that needs some rewriting for sure.
It's awesome, though. For those that don't know, Pester is like the testing framework that most people in PowerShell use, and I think it was shipped in the box for a while. But we've learned about PS. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that my motto for the Pester is if you can PowerShell it, you can Pester it. So the idea in the end is that if you want to test something, and I did a couple of presentations, even internally on companies I went before, to show that it's not only it's a PowerShell thing, but it's not only to the DBA in this case, because it was my role, but like showing to development teams and people that do deployments that they can write tests to check, like they know whenever they do the deployment that the connection string needs to be changed. They know that they deployed and they have 4 new files on that folder, and so on and so on. So they can write tests to the before and the after, like let's check if everything is stopped so I can do the deployment, and then let's check if everything is started again, and if I have all the number of files, the connections, all that things are changed or not. So for sure, if you can do with PowerShell something, you can use Pester to test that.
Nice. Kind of reminds me of like PS script analyzer for your PowerShell scripts, kind of like a series of best practices kind of thing you can define. And then, anytime you can get that sort of control over some kind of tech, whether it be your scripts, your SQL, your infrastructure is kind of what we're talking about a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's a huge step in the right direction of doing things, in my opinion. And from what I see, kind of like the right way, the more sustainable and more efficient way of going through things.
Yeah. It's true. The one thing I learned with Rob Sewell was doing Pester tests to check. So when I go and do a presentation, doesn't matter if online or in person, just to check that if I have everything okay. So do I have my Teams turned off? it's my computer in balanced mode or the power options, or everything is closed, so I do not have, can I snooze my notifications? So all that things, because you don't want to doing a presentation and all of a sudden something pop up, or you have some artifacts that start appearing, and being able to double check that is okay or not okay, all your pre-requirements. So if I'm doing a presentation with SQL Server and I know that to do this demo, I need to have a database with the name X on the specific location and so on and so on, I can do that with the pester. So I can run a check to say you are good to start your presentation in the end.
This kind of brings up a thought to me, which is, earlier we were talking about learning and doing things better and being free to make mistakes by using a test environment. And I feel like the reason why we're comfortable making mistakes, we have confidence that things aren't going to go terrible. And I think that can also apply to our production networks. How confident are you in your ability to know if things in your environment are not configured the way that they maybe should be? If you know that you have the kind of visibility when things go wrong or aren't how they should be, you can feel a lot more confident with making the changes and not just having this looming feeling of like, wait, is everything broken and I have no idea about it? I mean, sure, there will still be issues, but you'll have a lot more confidence.
Yeah, so I'm a picky person when it comes to doing stuff, and I sometimes I have second thoughts like, wait a second, why this is configured like this? Because I believe it's configured in the way because I hopefully think that someone did it that way on purpose. But then I can ask, because sometimes there are good reasons for the things are not in the, let's say, the default best practices. Most of the times it's just something that was overseen, so people just forget about it. But other times, and that's justify my picky and my double question, let's say, to the team. Someone said, no, that needs to be that way because we had this problem last time, blah, blah, blah. So that is documented on our side, so please don't change it. Okay, then it's okay.
So that's a common thing we hear about contributing to anything in PowerShell is asking a question isn't anything wrong, it's a chance to learn. So either your question will let them look at it a new way or you get a chance to learn. Either way, value comes from the question.
That's for sure. I lost the count of times that I ask something and the answer just get me in a good rabbit hole, like learning this thing and this thing, putting to the other thing, and all of a sudden I have like 10 new tabs on my browser to learn new stuff, right? Because you start, but this is awesome. I was not aware about this. Let's dig on it, and then you see another thing and say, right click, open a new tab, and yeah, then you can kind of expend the hours on that.
We're back to yak shaving.
Yeah,
you heard of that term before?
Yeah, on the last episode. Yeah, I was not aware of it. No, I was not aware of it. And the thing here is when you should stop, right? So because at a certain point, the things that you are reading are already far away from the initial point. But if you check how you went there, you say, okay, this is all connected. So maybe I don't need to go like 5 levels below, but the first and the second levels are enough for me just to have a better understanding on what I'm checking here. But as you said, the other thing is talking with those persons and say, hey, that's okay, but do you know that if you run this line of codes, you can do that like 10 times faster? And then you can reuse that and so on and so on. And people is like, oh, is that really possible to be done? And I say, hold my beer, and then we can check and share with people. I had one of those moments some weeks ago. So one client I was working with that was doing some reporting services, so which is a different service inside of the SQL world. And you have Power BI, and you can you have a portal, and you can upload the reports to that, and you can create folders with permissions and all that stuff. And Microsoft has a reporting service tools module that is managed by Microsoft, but mainly nowadays is with the support of the community. So we go there and we can contribute with stuff. And I was saying to that person on the client, do you know about this module? Because you were working about pipelines and do deployments and test things and make sure that everything is okay. Oh no, actually I don't. And then I sent the link. I sent one link and one demos that I did in the past, and I say, play a bit with it. If you have questions, just let me know. So in two weeks, they were like automating everything, and was awesome because I didn't spend like 3 hours explaining everything, but was you should do it that way for this specific thing. If you are with Power BI this way, with the other reports with this way, but play around and keep in mind this is open source and that is a GitHub. So double check if you hit some bug or whatever that can happen. But actually, for the majority of the things that you want to do, the answers to the automate and to repeat the tasks and to do it for dev and the QA and testing and whatever environment you want is here. And yeah, and they were very glad that we could point to somewhere to help them.
So when you find people and someone's never experienced DBA tools, maybe not use PowerShell much, but they're a DBA, what are some of the things that DBAs get their mind blown the most whenever they're first experiencing things? Like, what are some of the commands where they're like, wow, I can do this. I don't have to check this manually anymore.
Yeah. So one of the things so whenever you open a new session on SQL Server to run a query, you run the query connected to a database. It can be a system database or a user database. And there are some commands that you need to run on the context of the database, which means that if you want to run it manually, you open the query, the query window, you put the query there, you select the database, you run it. And that brings, let's say, one row with outputs. And now you say, now I want to check to the second database. So you go on the top, you change the database, you run it again, and so on and so on. So within SQL Server, there is all some kind of for each store procedure, system procedure that can help doing that. But imagine that now on multiple servers, on multiple sites, and so on and so on. So one comment that we have, and actually is a good thing to run now and then, because it's to check if we have been check our corruption on the database. So we can do a check DB, which in the end is to check if we have any corruption on our data and so on, and that should be run now and then. And you should check if the last one was good, it was okay, because if you find some corruption, it's better that you have previous backups to restore and to try to recover that data. Okay, and running that command and say just here are my 10 instance, please run it. I don't care what database are there. It will go to the 100 whatever database number you have there, and will bring output saying these are okay, not okay, not okay. And when you ask to people, how do you do that nowadays? Oh, I pick the script, I open a session, I run to one, and then I switch database, I run to the second. Oh, okay, and after 10 minutes, you finish for the first instance. What about the other 9 that we just run like in 1 minute? We were able to get everything. And people start saying, oh, this is the kind of automation that you're talking about. So it's like a haha moment, like, okay, so can you also do that for this or for that? Sure thing. And that is when people say, show me more.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'd definitely be like, show me more on that one.
Yeah.
Nothing quite motivates someone to learn quite like, hey, if you do this, you don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
That's a big selling point.
Yeah, that is true.
And you can get to the point where you're building things rather than just responding, and you're actually building some form of sustainability, some suite of tests you can consistently run to know how things are, and you can free yourself up to maintain that rather than just constantly running around doing the same tasks manually all the time.
Yeah, and in the end, doing here the parallelism with SQL Server, you will already have your Swiss Army knife of scripts. So because whenever you want to analyze some more specific things, and to do that over the time, you start having scripts with dozens, hundreds of lines, and you don't type it every single day. You go there, you copy paste, you change the parameter on the top or whatever, and you run it. So if you try to do this parallel between the things, you can show to the people that it's really possible to do it in a faster and consistent way, that you don't need to waste huge amount of times to accomplish the same thing. So, and then you get time to do the other things that you cannot automate, let's say this way, or that need your brain for different matters.
How is source control handled? Like you're mentioning these T-SQL scripts and stuff like that, and maybe people are writing their own little tests. Do you find that like you're having to introduce people in the DBA world to like Git or anything like that, or is there a different mechanism that people are using?
Yes, so I often see people that don't have source control at all, which is a shame. And you need to start with the basics. Why doing the source control in the end? I have people, I have seen clients and teams working with versioning, but in the wrong way. Like, oh, we have here a new change to be done. Let's create the scripts. Let's create the rollback scripts. Let's commit those together, but on a new folder, which is like the ticket number. And then you say, but wait a second, if I want to check what you changed from last version to the current one, I don't have it. Because I need to pick both scripts, open like VS Code, do a compare, and say, oh, okay, this line changed, the other line changed, and so on. So it's, on one way, it's okay because you have versioning somehow, but you don't have like the base script, the starting one, and all the change on top of that. And then, yeah, you have people that really use it to version control and make sure they put it there, and whenever they want to do some builds or pick the scripts to run it on the next environment, they will collect the ones that need to be done and deploy them. So we have a mix of everything, but I still think that most of the teams, most of the companies still don't use source control in general for DBA stuff, I mean.
Right. It's interesting. I mentioned earlier, and it keeps kind of coming back to me in my head, the kind of safety and confidence thing. If you have source control, you have safety. You have the confidence to know that you don't have to be a perfect coder. If you make a mistake, as we all do, you're able to go back to an earlier version that worked. You know, just, I don't want to be responsible for one typo and then having to spend an hour troubleshooting a script because I accidentally added one line and then it threw a different error and I just get lost.
So I have a thought on that. So we that are involved on community stuff and that work with other people on the same kind of topics and like to check new things and to test it, we have that mindset. Like I said before, no one knows everything, and that is the first thing. So I normally say, if you know what you don't know, that is halfway through to learn, right? But most of the times people are very scary, like, oh, if I say I don't know this, I will seem like a dump. Hey, no. So again, no one knows everything, and if you know that, it's cool that I can point you to a blog post. I can show you how I do it. It doesn't mean it's the perfect way, but you learn, and that is one thing. And what you just said, Andrew, about people having the source code and I can find where I did a typo and the typo break stuff and all that things. That is what I try to explain to the people that don't use source control, that we can work as a team. I can do a change. I can do my unit tests. It works on my machine, right? And then I can say to someone else, hey, please help me, go there, just give a pair of eyes on that change and tell me what you think. Or if you need to test it, please get it, test it, and give your thumbs up on the Git hub, lab, bucket, whatever you want. So let's put some rules and let's give these thumbs up to that I was not a one-man show change, but rather a team change. And whenever people acknowledge that, if it fails, we fail together. It's not about it's your fault because you did a change. Because then we start with finger pointing. No, it's your fault because you did not test correctly. So it doesn't make sense. And that mindset is where I found that most of the teams still don't get it. And that, for me, is a pillar on this way of working. If you don't understand that, by doing that, if you are afraid that people will point to you and say this code is ugly or bad or whatever, instead of no, this code can be better, let's try to do it that way, check the performance on this way and so on, and people will say, oh cool, I just learned something new, now I can go back to my 100 scripts and do all the change again, but I learned something. And if you don't have that mindset, it will be hard for you to grow, right, and to learn new things. So that is really one thing that I feel that is failing, is people willing to say, I don't know, but I want to learn.
Yeah. And I think that what you're doing and what we're kind of doing here in the community at large is helping give people the safety or the confidence that if they do ask these questions, people aren't going to freak out and call you an idiot. Yeah. It's very expected that you're not going to know everything. And everyone who I've talked to who kind of really knows their stuff and is respected in the community, whatever, has traditional success in their career, thinks that asking questions when you don't know things is the sign of something really good. It's not a sign of someone you don't want to work with. It's someone who you would like to work alongside, because you can have confidence that they're going to ask questions when they need it, and you can actually collaborate and solve things a lot faster, have a lot less time to growth and to development and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, completely
awesome
agree.
Stuff.
And the other thing is, and that I can totally understand, not everyone is up to hang out with a bunch of people that never saw before and doing the question and so on. So we don't need to be all, actively on the community and stuff like that, because you guys are here showing your faces and doing the podcast because you try it, and let's go out of our comfort zone and let's test it, right? I think in the end it happens with all of us somehow. There is that turning point where you say, let's try something new, right? And for these people, sometimes it's just slower, that process. But as long as they want to start and to do it, they are willing to that. I'm sure there is a lot of people that are willing to give the hand and to help on that process. So it's always think about your younger self. So did you had help by someone to learn things and to ramp up your stuff? Or it was like, oh no, I'm a poor guy, I'm here trying to do something and no one teach me, and no, let's try to fight for the things, right? And to give the extra mile. And I think that is the idea. And I try to pass that to younger people that sometimes I have already mentoring some people like internships and stuff like that. And they think they are younger. They just get out of universities or some tech course. And the mindset is already, oh, I will not do questions because I should know this. No, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. And you will ask me, and I will ask you back, and I know that is rude, but I'm sorry. I will ask you back, what have you tried? What did you search? What is your, where you went to so far? Oh, actually, I'm asking first. Then that is the, in my opinion, the wrong approach. Let's try to search something, to test something, and let me know if then you are failing. And then they come back and I say, so what you learned? Oh, I learned like 100 ways of not doing this for sure. So, and then they will do the other way, and you can then guide them, and you can understand, okay, this is of course the next step, so I can help here for sure. And in the end, some people that I have helped in the past, nowadays they come to me and say, hey, at the time I was thinking you were being like too harsh, not like talking bad to the people, but it's like they were like, oh, you are not helping me. No, I'm not giving you the answer right away, right? So I'm trying to push you so you understand and use the tools, and you know how to search something and so on. Yeah, and that I think is important to have, because everyone needs to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I love what you said about given enough time. You know, not everyone has to be a public speaker. You know, you can take whatever steps make sense to you. Maybe it's just internally, you have a weekly thing where you talk to your team about some of the best practices you've learned. That's awesome.
For sure.
And I think that when you were telling your story initially, you mentioned how when you first got involved with the SQL groups, that you would just sit in the back and kind of maybe just meet some people, but not talk, not be a heavy contributor. You know, you found the pace that worked for you to slowly push your boundaries. And now you obviously have gone quite a long way since then, but it was one step at a time.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, for for most of the people, it's easy to say, oh yeah, but you know that because you have, 10 years of experience of this, of that. Yeah, I can have the experience, but I need to build it, right? I need to want to do the next thing or the next step, or I need to go out of my comfort zone and try to learn the next thing. If I don't do that, I can have 30 years of experience, but maybe I will be just good closing tickets. And that's what I get from that, right? So that is the thing. So you don't need to be in public. You don't need to be like a well-known person on the environment, but just by following some blogs, going to this conference and stuff, that is something that I recommend. And once again, it depends on each person, but because nowadays we have so many different types of content that we can consume, that sometimes it's hard for someone that is starting, where should I start? Because I have the podcast of these guys, and I have these blog posts, and I have this conference, and this bigger conference, and this one that is hybrid, and so on. So you need to start somewhere, and then you slowly will find your spot and understanding where you want to go and learning more from there.
Yeah. Gotta try some things. Throw some spaghetti on that wall and see what sticks for you.
Well, one thing I've learned is even when you step out of your comfort zone to do one area, it's not always easier to try something new, right? Like it's each new avenue that you're trying to help out or join the community, it always feels like it's a brand new hurdle, even if it, no matter how public or less public it is, just each step for me is always a struggle. Like I feel like with the podcast, it's very, very public and out there. Everything else should be easier, but they're requesting speakers for Summit, and I can't get myself to submit. Like I've had multiple people tell me to, and I can't do it. I'll get there.
Probably that is where the imposter syndrome enters, right? It's like that thing that I cannot do this because then a smarter guy comes and asks this question, and I don't know the answer. And it's nothing wrong to say, sorry, but I don't know the answer of that. I read this or that, but I never went to that path, or I never dig on that. But maybe next time that you do the session, again, because we repeat sessions, right? So you can be okay, but we evolve on the session. And maybe if you had that question before, the odds that will be being asked again are big. So let's learn on that, if it makes sense, of course, for the session. And then next time you are prepared for that. So you learn something.
That's a common theme too that we hear a lot is I don't know isn't a bad answer. And I think it needs to be modified. I don't know is not a bad answer if you use it as a launching point to keep learning. If it's a reason to stop or push off the work, then it is a bad answer.
Yeah, that is just acknowledging that you still have something to learn and more to learn.
Yeah, I think that in this podcast, we've talked a lot about technical skills and a lot of ways to kind of improve those. But I also think that we've talked a lot about human skills and like emotional intelligence and the ability to be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm not sure about this, but here's what I've tried. And communicating when you have an issue with the module, are you going to say nothing? Are you going to post a nice issue that kind of makes sense and get some assistance on it? What are you going to do? And I think that while the technical skills are really important, I feel like if you have the learning mentality, even if your skills aren't as up to snuff, you have the ability to ask questions and be honest and learn from your mistakes. I think that is a very important and often overlooked thing that if you're listening and you're in your career trying to get to maybe the next step, investing in those skills is a great idea.
Yep, totally agree. So get involved in the way that you feel more comfortable. So you want something and you don't know how to do it, you don't find it on the examples, it's failing, just drop a message, just go to the GitHub, open an issue, and if then you find the solution, just say, oh, never mind, I found it, and close the issue. That is not a problem at all. Actually, that is documentation in the end. So it's and also sometimes bring the maintainers to pick that and say, let's add another example to the comment, because actually this was a problem for someone. And if it is a problem for you, for sure, it's also a problem for another bunch of people.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Community, I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool to have this place where you can throw some questions and having great minds that can point you to the right direction. I think when I think about the sessions I try to do, I have some sessions. Normally, I like demo sessions, so things that people can see actually things happening. If it is SQL Server, if it is PowerShell, but actually something that can show to the people, okay, I normally do this way. This person is showing a different way. I'm seeing these benefits, so I can apply it on my day-to-day. And I really like have one slide, like we are here to this session, enough slides. Let's open the code and digging on the demos. And one thing that I feel that is important to remind everyone is that every single day, there is someone in the world start working with a tool. So whenever people say, oh, but this person is doing for the gazillion time this session about best practices on SQL Server, and everyone knows the best practice on the SQL Server. No, it's not true, right? Because every single day there are people going out of the universities or even starting them and having T-SQL or SQL in general, and that needs to understand the basic stuff. Now, it's common that on the conference and a place like this, the people that is mostly from a community sometimes is already on the next level, let's say that between quotes, and they want to see the next thing. So the thing they never saw before, or the problem they will be their next problem, and so on. But the thing is, if I'm starting now nowadays working with DBA tools, let's say, I still need to know what is a database. I still need to know how to do a select on the database. And sometimes, starting with the basics, it's the bridge that we need to go to the next level, right? And that is something to keep in mind. It's no wrong having basic stuff on the sessions, and even a complete session about the basics of something. Because if you want to onboard more people on the conference, newcomers and stuff like that, we need to keep that in mind. Because again, every single day, month, year, we have people starting working on the tech sites, working with different tools, and of course that we have a huge amount of blog posts, videos, and so on. But people that are more keen to learn from in-person presentation, they would like to go there and learn the basics also from there. So I think that is important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat, Jordan. I'm doing the weekly podcast combined with like preparing for a talk. I'm not that interested in it. Not right now.
So I did a dry run for my idea for a talk on a webcast, and at the end of end of my presentation, I looked at the first comment is, yeah, but why would you do this? And I got to tell you, that was that felt like I wasted a lot of time.
Yeah, that is something that I think we learn over the time. So there are always comments that are outliers, always. So the same way that you feel like, oh, maybe I did something wrong because this person just did that question, right? Like, but why do you do that? At the same time, you have the other point. It's like, oh, your session was awesome. And so as you say, come on, it was the first time I did it. Why it was so awesome, right? So you have always this good and bad devil, right? Saying things to you. So you need to balance that things.
So overall, what I did is I used PowerShell to query machines, and then I put it into a time series database, and I built just like a dashboard of your environment on that. And his take was the dashboard's a waste of time. It should just be alerting. Which, I mean, it's valid. Alerting has a lot of value in there, but it's just, I don't know. I just went on graphing just because I think when I first had the idea was after the big SolarWinds breach. So I'm like, well, I can do kind of something similar. It turns out it was a lot of work and it didn't work near as well as SolarWinds, but I thought it was interesting to do. But the first comment was, yeah, but you wasted your time.
Well, but maybe you learned something along that way. For sure, you learned something, even small things, but and things that even how to presenting, right? How to do the thing, or the thing that you was just you noticing that small problem, but it was there. right? And next time you will say like, oh, wait a second, now I cannot forgot to turn off, I don't know, this application or do a clear screen first before starting the next demo, whatever. Sometimes it's small things, but you learn always something on those presentations. And the other thing that I cannot stress enough is that people attending the sessions should always try to give feedback. And good or bad. So the thing is, try to help, because if you found something was not as clear as it should, or I had once feedback like, oh, you should use more Zoom it, because we were like on a 4K screen or wherever, and the things were like tiny letters. And I said, damn bass. So why? Yeah, of course I should use more Zoom it. And I use it, and I do the arrows and I do the squares and all that stuff. But at some demos, I was so like, oh, demo. And then I forgot about do the zoom on the right spots. But also that persons could raise the hand and say, hey, do you mind to zoom it right now so we can see it better? For sure. Yeah.
I think that earlier you also mentioned, if you're giving a talk and someone asks a question, you don't know the answer, you don't have to know everything about it. I think that not knowing everything and being present and saying like, hey, I'm not sure about that, doing that in front of an audience of people gives them some confidence in a certain way, where they see someone kind of going through maybe a situation some people fear and they're completely fine at the other end. And you kind of watch that and you're like, oh, wow, the world didn't explode. Nothing happened. I hung out with people afterwards. It kept going. It was fine. It's a very normal human thing.
Yeah, that's right. Because you always have also that person that knows more than you, but did not send the session to present, right? And then goes there and exits the session and is like being grumpy and say, so this guy knows some things, but I can't learn anything from him because I already knew all these things. And well, maybe read the abstract, maybe double check that the session level will fit for you, or do questions if you have those questions and you want to learn something else. But again, it's much easier to be grumpy alone and not try to help yourself and also the presenter in the end.
I'd say if you walk out of a presentation with, oh, I could do it better, then do it. Show up next year with your presentation and let them learn something.
Yeah. So sometimes you have that feeling like I can improve it for sure, and doing something else, and yeah. So if you know the person that do that kind of comments, that is like a little bit toxic people in the end. So because again, you can go on that route like, okay, next time or next conference, I will be there to see your session. Oh no, I'm not submitting and so on. But why? So you know so much. Why don't you share with the others?
So with mine, I want to be clear. I don't feel like he was being malicious or negative. I just think like he felt like I missed the target.
Yeah.
I think he was just trying to point me another direction, but I don't know. I don't.
But
we'll see.
That is the bad feedback that in the end is, or not bad feedback, it's good feedback that went on the negative or more negative side. And actually, it depends how do you perceive that. So when you read that, you think, well, this was useful for me, but yeah, there is this guy that didn't found useful as well. It's like you do something and someone says, but why are you doing that? Is this tool that do that? You just need to pay $1,000 and everything is okay. Yeah, but I don't have it. So people, it's always, I understand the willing of, let's not, in some situations, reinventing the wheel and stuff like that. But sometimes there are other needs, and we go back to that point like, why are you doing this way? Oh, because of this and this back in the past, we had this problem. Okay, so there is a reason for that. And sometimes we need to put ourselves on the shoes of the presenter whenever we start thinking that the presentation is like way off of the thing that you were expecting, to try to understand the needs they had to do those kind of things. And then they are sharing in the end the knowledge and the pitfalls and all the problems they had along the way. And that is cool. So, but I'm optimistic by default. So that I try always to see the good side of the things and say, okay, this guy was having a bad day. Let it go.
It's usually something to learn from a situation.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So let's say I'm just a normal DBA. Hey, like I kind of mentioned this type of person earlier. Never really used PowerShell, never used DBA tools, haven't kind of discovered the community at large. What is my next step? What is my entry point into getting up to speed on everything?
Yeah, so I'll do a couple of questions on that, because how do you feel that you learn better? It's reading, it is hang out with people and asking questions and feel comfortable asking them and waiting for some answers. It's watching movies, or in this case, videos at YouTube, wherever. So that depends, because with DBA tools, actually, we have a plenitude of channels, let's call it that way, where you can go to try to learn the things. So if you have someone that says, no, I'm very proficient with Git, I'm completely okay, then you can say, cool, you can go directly to the code if you want. You can go there and check what changed and so on. And then you have that person that say, well, I opened this blue window, the Windows PowerShell, or this terminal one right now with PowerShell core, but I don't know how I should do next. And then we point to documentation. We have some kind of initial guideline, which has some more easy comments to understand, okay, I'm doing this get DBA database, and in the end, it's the same thing that go to the system and do select star from sys.databases. So I'm having the same properties and checking the things. So it really depends. I try to guide the people depending on they feel more comfortable with the type of content they feel more comfortable. But for sure, so starting with the docs, that is RTFM, reading the fantastic manual. That is always something that I try to remind people that they should do it, because we really strive to have good documentation on each comment with good examples and so on. And over the time, we still improve them, because there is this edge case, this new thing that people found that is not yet perfect, let's say this way, or can be better. But yeah, start that point, and start with DBA tools is always start with everything that it says get. Don't, before you go with set, invoke, remove, or something, some other verbs, start with the get. Because that way you will start feeling comfortable getting data from SQL Server. Then what you do with that data, it's the next step.
Very interesting. I remember early on in my career, what I really liked when I was kind of getting comfortable, I haven't blogged, I hadn't done any of that, I'm very scared, was having friends or mentors really, who I felt comfortable reaching out to directly. And I could kind of test the waters in that way. So say you wanted that to kind of meet some people and maybe find someone who you can befriend and get some advice from. What would be some ways of meeting some people in the community?
Well, so social media will be one first step, because it's far away, let's say. So you guys are in the US, I'm in Portugal, on the Europe. So we can talk, we can follow each other's and check what's going on. And if we are open to that, we can open the DMs, right, the direct message, and talk or chat a bit. Also, in this case, the Slack community, because there is a huge amount of channels from different areas inside of the data community, where DBA tools and PowerShell are also there. And do not mistake with, there is also a PowerShell Slack, okay, that is a different one. But this one, and if you are into the DBA tools path, that the data community on Slack is the right one. And going there, you start hanging out with people, and you start learning by the questions that the other people is doing, right? And then if you read some blog posts by a couple of persons, you can try your luck in the end, because there is always this thing like, oh, I will send an email to this guy that every single week I read their newsletter or blog posts, and I feel that I would like to learn more about it. So you can try that. And obviously, if you can go on an in-person event, that is much more personal, and it's easier to do a face-to-face question, right? And you say, hey, I'm trying to do this and that. Do you mind if now and then I throw some questions just to make sure? Because actually nowadays we get that. We contributors of DBA tools, we get that questions. I have people on LinkedIn, on Twitter, that from now and then they go and say, hey, I was really trying to do this, but I'm having this error and so on. And then I try to help and to point to the right direction. So the first thing, you should not be afraid that people will say, no, I don't have time, I will not help you. Because that can happen. Let's be honest, that can happen. But most of the times, if it is within the community, and you just go to the Slack channel, open the channel, and you are there like 10 minutes, and you see a lot of different questions and answers in threads, and just by reading, you are learning. So then you can try to DM that direct guy and keep the conversation going, for instance. So maybe it's a good first point to find something.
And I think that you've spoken from your perspective about learning and how you like learning by teaching and how valuable teaching is to you. And not only that, from what I've gathered, you're also pretty passionate about PowerShell and SQL. And when you find someone with that kind of mixture of things, they're going to more than likely be open and happy to share this knowledge and learn through teaching and help other people reach the level of success that they've reached and kind of go through that again. It's a fun thing that not everyone has time for all the time, but throughout the community, if there's that kind of feeling of collaboration and learning and that type of, we're building something special here, it's definitely a good idea to ask your questions. You can feel safe doing that.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think, well, some people probably are expecting that you do the work for them. Sometimes that also happens. So sometimes we see like doing a question, we answer pointing to directions and to the help or to try this way or try that way. But what they were expecting was really, can you send me the PS1 script, please? And you said, no, well, I have other things to do in my work. So I'm trying to help you. And that is the way I think you will learn. And then some people are very mad that you, in the end, you didn't want to help me. Well, it's your perception. So because I think I was being helpful and try to point you to the right direction. So that.
I think it's fair to not expect that someone will solve your whole question for you. But I think a lot of times if people see the effort and you've shown kind of like, here's what I've tried, here's where I'm trying to go, can someone help me? And if you kind of take their feedback and go, and you can usually end up in a good spot. And if you consistently show yourself as someone who asks good question, is clearly into the process, is trying the new things, you see them active, you're going to probably get a little bit more of a response than if you're just, for the first time ever, posting, just saying, hey, give me an answer. How do I do this? Send script.
Yeah, that's for sure. So doing the things along the way and showing the interest on the topics and how you failed and how you try it again and how you solve the thing. And sometimes you solve, it's working, but then after a couple of months, now instead of being one object is 100, and now it's very slow again. So, and then you can request like a pair of eyes. Hey, so I was running this, it was all cool, but now it's very slow. Can anyone spot here any problem? And you post like a code snippet and someone will pick, oh, try to change this. So, and that sometimes is enough to put it on the next adventure, let's say.
It's really cool. You know, obviously we talk about community all the time. It's awesome to have a member of the SQL community joining us again, because when you look at what a community can do, there's a lot of examples of people collaborating, meeting someone else at a conference, creating a command to move some databases, and all of a sudden you have this years later huge module that is being used by people who've never developed for it, but something the community was able to build is able to be maintained, give more value, have updated docs, blah, 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 just through the power of collaboration and there being a community. Because without that, we maybe have some organizations that have some of the commands that are in there that they've written in-house and haven't ever shared. But that's not the world that we live in. We live in a beautiful collaborative world with things like DBA tools, Dba Checks.
Yeah, totally agree. It's the power of everyone together doing some much bigger things. Would be impossible. That is the fact. So what we have today to be done just by 1, 2 persons or 3 persons, like, oh no, this is my code and this is not open source and I will write it and all that stuff, right? So the power of the community, the power of put it out there is really being possible to bring more people. So we had, and you guys already interview Fred, that work also with DBA tools, and he was like the C# engineer behind the scene. So he actually built some commandlet, not the function, but the commandlet, because it was on the C#, okay? Because that way was much faster than the other. And most of us were looking to that and say, cool, that is fast, but I don't get it how it works. But it's okay. So then we learn, and then we can support it. Perfect. But it's important to have different areas and different minds with different problems, with different situations on the day-to-day, so we can expand the things in a good way.
Yeah, I think that what's being done, just we'll use DBA tools for an example, where you're building something. There's tests, there's documentation. If you find an issue with the documentation, that's perfect. We'll take and improve from there. That type of model of growth and of development and of building something, you should strive to replicate that in whatever way with kind of what you're doing with tech, or where you're building things where there's a nice, productive, efficient system at play here, and you're not consistently just doing the same things over and over and over.
Yeah. So automation in the end is about being repetitive with less effort, because you already, let's say, wrote the things one time, less error prone, which is I think the most valued thing that we can have, because a machine will not made a mistake, let's say. So if we do the same thing twice, we expect the same results in that situation, right? And if it is the human, maybe you click on the one pixel left, and maybe the result is already different. And yeah, having that doing the machine doing the work for us, that's is awesome.
It's cool that, you know, more and more people, it's kind of becoming more of a default thought on how to do things, which is really cool. And I'm excited to see how that changes over the years as more and more organizations and, you know, different industries even kind of see things from that perspective more and more.
Yeah, I
It's a
think
fun time.
I had some situations like with some security teams, because PowerShell you can automate, and then if you have access from one place, you can do it, and this will be like firing things all these from all these points and so on, and that is not secure. That is a problem, and all that stuff. And I say, but wait a second, if I can do it manually, it's okay, right? So if I can jump on the servers, if I can connect to the systems and click around and click on the wrong thing, no problem. But if I do it in a way that it takes me like 1/10 of the time, that is a problem. Oh, wait a second. Now that you say that, and then start thinking about the thing again. One recent client, we were talking about, let's put DBA tools here because it's just 3 servers. But we don't live without DBA tools right now. So it's like, if we say to the client, hey, we have this PowerShell module, we can show it to you. So one of the big things also on DBA tools is that the module is digital signed, which means that on these big companies, sometimes it's like just remote signed or stuff like the execution policy that you have. And if you don't have that, could be a problem. But in this case, we also have that covered, which is awesome, because it doesn't matter if it is a big 5 or whatever, you can prove that the code is there, is signed, is open source, you can check the code and so on. And actually, that on that client, it was like the manager, the person that was doing the bridge between us and like the developers and so on, that when we say, oh, we have a module to install, and say, oh, wait a second, if you have a module, we need to ask to these guys because it's a security. And I say, okay, here we go again. Okay, let's do that meeting with people and so on. But just to make sure, we already have meetings with other colleagues on the same projects that they are sysadmins. They are using PowerShell to remotely do all the management of the things, and that is okay. So we don't expect this to be a problem. But sure, let's talk. Let's show that is safe and all the things. So whenever we went to the meeting, I think the guy from the security was like, what I'm doing here? Oh, because they are thinking about install some module, and I say PowerShell modules. Because a module, yeah. So on a enterprise where you have Linux and you have Windows and all the kind of things, when you say a module, it can go very quickly to different types of modules. And the guy said, okay, but what is the problem about that? Oh, it's this because they will use the central machine to. Yeah, that is how we work nowadays. So that is completely okay. So you can download, you can put it on the machine, you can use it, but that is no problem at all. And we said, hey, don't forget, if this is somehow forbidden, then other teams should also be forbidden because they are using DevOps modules, Azure modules, whatever, right? So it's like trying to find problems where they not exist in the end. But we were okay, like explaining it's no problem, this is the way. And then on that same client, we had like an intervention to be done. And we said, you see here, let's do it with dbatools. 3 comments, run, it's done. Do you want to know how we do that manually? So we need to go here, we need to stop the system, we need to use robocopy to move the file to the other place, we need to change internally the metadata, and then start again everything. Oh, now I see why do you like to use it? Yeah, because like you as a client also pay 1 hour and not 3 or 4. So that is also a benefit, right?
Jordan.
Is it time for the consistent questions?
Uh-oh.
This is getting serious here. Now
It's been consistent, I'd say.
we asked 3 questions, each more difficult to answer than the last, to really hold your feet to the fire to see if you've got what it takes to keep up with the podcast here.
Can you make it through all 3?
Yeah, can you handle all 3?
Let's see.
All right, first question. What is one time something went wrong while on the job? How did you handle it and what did you learn?
So as a data guy, backups are key, okay? So I think
Sounds like a good story.
Yeah. So imagine, can you please drop this database? Yeah, sure thing. And it was not with PowerShell, this one, okay? Just to start easily. Yeah, sure. I'm right now connected there. Drop database, boom, done. Database is gone. And then, boom, some alerting. Wait a sec. Oh, wait, I was on the wrong server. I think if it never happened to you, it's because you are not touching on the things.
Yeah.
So it can happen. So it's the cool thing was that we had backups and we could easily, it was also a small database, so it was easy to restore it and put it as it was before. So it was not a production system, but a test system, and they want to drop it on the dev system. So in the end, no big problems, just a couple of tests that were failing because no database any longer. But doing or showing an example more PowerShell related, I think, so with automation, it's quite easy to scale, right? That is awesome. As we said before, so I'm doing this for 1 database, and all of a sudden I can do to 10, and then 10 times I don't know how many servers. And there was one time that I was doing some login cleanup. So I was checking, okay, these logins will no longer be needed, and so on. So let's drop them. And I mistyped, so it was a pair of logins, and I did a typo with one name. So like it was an underscore instead of a dash, something like that. And all of a sudden I put the command to run and always with verbose to see what's happening. And I start seeing much more occurrence that I was expecting. And I say, what's happening here? Control C, let's cancel this, let's cancel. And when I look and say, oh, come on, I did this typo. So the cool thing was that we had backups also from these logins, these scripts, and we could easily re-add them to the instance and start over without the typo. So the bottom line here is that that's awesome that we can scale, but when you have an error, the error will scale too. Okay, so that is the thing. And here, one suggestion, try to use the what if. So what if parameter.
What if it's a game changer?
Yeah. So one thing that is a shame is that not every single command that actually has the commandlet binding and has the what if actually has the what if well implemented. So you can still, and mainly if it is like this scripts that I wrote and I forget, for instance. So it's an open source thing and so on. So the thing is, you should try to check that, because that way you will be sure that you will see what you are expecting in the end. So you don't delete more or remove more or change more that you are expecting, and do not have bigger problems with that.
No, you're off to a good start, but now we're getting serious with the questions.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, are you ready?
Yeah, let's see.
All right. With what you know now, what was one tip you'd give your younger self when you're first starting out in IT?
Yeah, so I would say that when I was more younger, I would like to do everything learning and get the things done and do it in a fast way to go to the next thing and all that stuff. And as I said before, I'm picky, but I'm also human. And when you start getting tired, when you start making some mistakes, something that seems quite easy to be done, all of a sudden you are like 2-3 hours on that situation analyzing, and you don't get anywhere. So the thing that I learned some years ago is to learn when you should step aside from the keyboard, from the computer, and do something else. It can be go play with your daughter, it can be talk with your wife, go take a walk. So just try to put your head out of that space where you went like 2 or 3 hours digging on something that it is sometimes it's even more frustrating, because you know that you know how to solve that, but somehow you are not getting there. So I lost the count of all the times that I said, okay, it's enough, close the computer, tomorrow is a new day. And I have a good night of sleep, and then on the next morning, because in the end, my brain in the background are still processing that problem and thinking about what I should try differently to make sure that I can fix it. And most of the times, after some hours or a good night of sleep, I wake up in the morning and I have a, haha, now I know what I can test next. And then in 5 minutes, you solve the problem. So if you feel yourself going in the rabbit hole and taking too long to fix something or to understand something, take a pause, go somewhere. Don't think about that for some time. And whenever you will come with different perspective, with let's say different pair of eyes to look at things again, and hopefully you will progress on that.
That is fantastic advice. That's
Very
wonderful.
true.
Actually, if I ever get that question, I'm stealing your answer, because
but yeah, so again, for most of the people, it's like a sign of weakness. So, oh, you are stepping away because you cannot solve it. Come on. So it doesn't make sense, right? And actually, it's a good exercise.
All right. Well, I'll be honest. You're crushing it so far, but now things are getting serious. Question 3. And if it's too much, just let us know. We'll dial it back. What's your 3 favorite modules in PowerShell?
So it's hard to give a top 3, and I can explain why. So I go. That is of course probably the most of the answers that you get, because people that love PowerShell, in the end, they love things that help them to do the things easily. So dbatools for sure, because in the end, it was my way through the community, the PowerShell, and it's something then that I still contribute, I still use, I still teach, I still make the things happen, and that is for sure something that put me on the next level in my career, doing the thing faster, more reliable ways, and having time for the rest. Dba Checks too, because it's like, let's say the sibling of the DBA tools, and also makes a huge difference when you are doing some analysis at scale. And these together, in the end, can have tester associated. So writing tests, normally we see that is like writing documentation, right? But if you do test-driven development, like, let me write one test that I want the comments to be able to pass, because I know this is the right thing, then you write your comments to go through the test that you know it's the right thing, and you don't get that slightly chance to say, let me write the test differently so the test pass. so it's that is cheating, right? So yeah, pester. Again, if you can PowerShell it, you can pester it. So something to keep in mind. Also, together with pester, and that is also part somehow of both modules, is the PS framework. So one of the modules that Fred wrote. So it is highly customizable. You can do a lot of things, and we use it on any module that, as a community, we now built, because it is really, really good to have it. But I think we have some, let's say, some mentions, like I like the Posh RS job from Boprox, which is a module that allows you to run things in parallel with throttling. So you can say, hey, I have these 10 instances of SQL Server to go and do something, and I want to do that 3 at a time, because I'm running this on a 4 CPU machine or something like that, 4 cores. And whenever one finish, it will automatically put another one and another one. And in the end, we pick all together and we have the results. So it's very good to scale when you don't have more CPU power, let's say this way, but you can kind of throttling along the way. I have process that I did with dbatools that went down from 7 hours to like 2 hours by using this approach, because we put it on like a pipeline, and whenever one of those finish, it make room to another one, the other one starts, and let's do that. And PS script analyzer, we already talked about it. So this is like the thing that no one's nowadays, some people that start with PowerShell and like using, I don't know, VS Code and stuff, see, oh, very cool, I'm missing this curly bracket, and I'm missing this thing, and I'm not doing in the same line of the if statement and so on. And people think, oh, this is VS Code. And actually it's not. It's the script analyzer in the end that is doing all this thing. And we also use it somehow to have our code standards. So if we don't have, let's say, spaces versus tabs or something like that, if that is not okay, it will yell and say, well, wait a second, this is not consistent with what we are expecting. So yeah, it's something that is in the background, but nowadays is very helpful to have a good code and with consistency and all that stuff. Also, import Excel. And I know, sorry, I'm extending my thing, but as a data guy, the import Excel is also something to have. So for people that doesn't know it, you can generate Excel files without having Excel installed. So the first time I heard that, and I remember to work with COM objects and stuff like that in VB6 and stuff, when I heard, what? Wait a second, so I don't need the COM objects to do a new instance and then do all the work? No, that is like black magic for me. And then I implemented multiple times in different clients to generate graphics and tables inside of the Excel with frozen headers and filtering things with a couple of lines of PowerShell. Is really, really awesome. And in the end, anything that is useful. So the most recent one that I just installed, because I was trying to solve a problem, in the end, I was trying to combine 2 PDF files. And in 2022, we still don't have, or it's not easy to find like a easy or a graphic interface tool that it's like free and you just want to open 2 of them and combine together and it's done. And I said, wait a second, I'm sure probably anyone already wrote a module that can do that. And there is a PS write PDF. You just say combine path number 1, path number 2, outputs, and it's done. So I just want to have a single file, and I was like searching on the internet, and it's like, oh yeah, upload free your 2 files, and we will make you download the final one, and so on. But I don't want to put my information there. So if I can do it locally, I would prefer that, right? So yeah, PS write PDF is also awesome because I just installed it and did a merge of 2 files in like 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely recommend, if you're trying to combine files or convert things, don't upload company data to those websites that say they'll do it for you, please. Please don't. Do it with your little JPEGs of your cat that you don't care about, but do not do it with corporate data, please. it's a good idea to not have those habits.
Hey, but what can happen? They do not save backups of that for sure.
Oh no, for sure.
Well, Claudio, you crushed the questions, but I got some bad news for you.
Oh,
I kept saying 3 questions, but I lied to you because I lack integrity. I have a 4th question for you. Where can I get DBA tools in a month of lunches?
Oh, actually, there is a couple of places. So originally, it is from Manning. So if you go to Manning Publisher, you can get it from there. But you can get it on Amazon. And you can also get it in some bookstores. So I already saw. So in Portugal, unfortunately, I didn't saw yet on the bookshelf, right? So that will be the next step: going to the bookstore and say, "Oh, it's there," and taking some pictures. that will be awesome. But yeah, some of the, let's say, the bigger publishers have it on the websites that you can order, and they will send it home. And so not on the stores itself, but online. And you can get, let me just give me 1 second because I will pick here just the code that you can get 50% discount.
Whoa,
Get the book
50%.
from the Manning website. Just give me 1 second that I can get it here.
I'm going to guess off the top of my head, BL DBA Tools 50. That's just my guess.
Yeah, that is a good guess. I never remember that one on top of my head.
I read it off your website.
Oh, that is cool. Cool. That was what I was adding up to try to get it. So thank you for helping on that.
All right. Well,
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really excited with what we've covered here today. I really hope that there are some people who are DBAs who do some SQL stuff who haven't seen all this and who are going to get exposed to a bit of a new world and kind of start some really cool stuff for their career, for their work, for whatever else they're interested in. So,
yeah. And if there are people on that situation, which I believe it always exists, just doesn't matter if you are hearing this 1 week from now or 1 year, just add to the DBA Tools website, to the Slack channel, as we said before, and also to the GitHub. And if you follow some people that contribute, you can always do some questions so people can kind of guide you on the next steps if you feel that need.
if people want to follow you, are you on Twitter?
I am on Twitter. So
I know you're on Twitter.
Yeah. So my Twitter handle is Cláudio ES Silva, which is the same for the LinkedIn and also the same for my website. But on my website, it ends with .eu. So the, let's say, European part of it to make it easy for the people.
Awesome. We'll have those links in the show notes for quick clicking.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. So, I mean, we held your feet to the fire there. We put you through the ringer. You made it through. So now I have a special treat for you.
Okay.
All right. So through the generations, people come into this earth that are just the paragon. They are the sum total of a certain aspect. You see a lot with Greek gods. You've got Dionysus, which I believe was party and wines. I want to hang out with that guy. But Andrew, as you may not know, is the paragon of shilling. And he's here to just lay down a beautiful narrative for you to find out how you can interact with this podcast. Take it away, Andrew.
Friends, welcome to the shill of the ride, the power shill, if you will. Thank you for gathering here today to listen about the amazing PowerShell. You have problems. PowerShell and DBA Tools has answers. And if you're a true lover of PowerShell and like what we're doing here with the podcast, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Did you hear something useful? Share it with your friend and coworkers. You could even share it with your kids or neighbors, get it out there. Everyone needs to hear the power of PowerShell. I'd like to give a thank you to Jake and Andy for reaching out to us and sharing their perspectives and their stories with PowerShell. If you have some kind words you'd like to share with us, you can email us, powershell@pdq.com, Or you can hit us up on a very popular website, Twitter, at PowerShell Pod. Thank you so much, friends of the show.
Oh, it's beautiful. Every time it gets better.
Really good.
All right.
Is there anything else we're supposed to say now?
I mean, we're supposed to exit, but I just feel bad talking after we just watched some poetry in action there. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You guys are awesome. Keep the good work.
Thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast with your hosts, Jordan Hammond and Andrew Plough.
You don't want to be messing with them guys. They are bad news.
The PowerShell Podcast is a production of BDQ.com.